Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Webdelics podcast, where we're on a journey to find out the truth about plant medicine, get rid of the myths, and change the narrative. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and with us today is Dom Farnan. Don, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. Well, I'll start with that I am a joyful, free, passionate woman. And I try and show up that way every single day. I'll tell you, it's been quite a journey. It takes a lot of intention, and it's not perfect. Beyond those words that describe me, I'm a mother, and I run a couple of companies, and I'm a conscious leader, and really trying to be a heart-led, human-first leader in my life.
You know, there's always something special about someone who introduces themselves by going directly to the heart and who they are behind the resume. So I want to thank you for bringing that into the room. And I think the way you described yourself will not only resonate with a lot of folks that are listening to or watching the show, but I think it will really help bring gravity and meaning to this episode as we continue to talk about it further. So thank you so much for that.
Awesome.
Now, the theme of today's show is how psychedelics can help you leave toxicity behind. And I'm going to start by keeping it real with you, keeping it real with the audience, just like I promised from day one that I would. There have been times in my life in which I have practically defined the term toxic. And it's embarrassing to admit, but I'd be lying if I were to say anything other than that. Just as an example, recently I have a role in an organization in which I walked into that role with some assumptions about what it would look like, how it would play out, and became frustrated and annoyed when my interactions with the person who was leading the portion of this organization that I was part of had, without really stating it, different ideas as well as different expectations about the underlying purpose and meaning of the role. And as the year wore on, I found myself getting edgy and snappy and being argumentative and making caustic remarks. And I realized at some point I was not showing up as that sort of loving, full, conscious human being that you just described yourself working to be every single day. I was toxic. But what I did with that other organization is exactly kind of what I'm doing right now, is it's making assumptions about what something is. So before we go any further, I wanted to get your thoughts on what toxicity is, and what does it mean in a workplace or in an interpersonal situation to you, Dom?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Good question. For me, I didn't know I was toxic. I also had toxic traits. I didn't even know that was a term. I think I was toxic before it was a thing, just like I was working remote before it was a thing, right? So what my journey and my awakening has shown me in the last couple of years has just been creating awareness around, to your point, behavior. And so just because you exhibit certain behaviors doesn't mean at your core, your essence, that you are toxic. You know, sometimes certain situations and certain people, certain language, certain experiences may trigger something within you to show up in a certain way. And you might react. So, you know, when you're not in your consciousness, you are in react mode and on automated programming, as we like to call it, like old school stuff that has come and stayed with you from childhood. But in reality, when you start this journey of awareness and awakening and personal development of sorts and plant medicine, all of those tools give you little clues about yourself. And so I think it's been helpful for me on my journey from toxic boss to conscious connector to know that I am not that behavior. Like that behavior is a thing, but I am not. I am a being of love and light, you know, and that's what I'm really here to be in my truest essence. It doesn't always show up like that. And even now with all the awareness I've created for myself for the last couple of years, doesn't mean that every day I show up in my pure love and light. I don't. I hate to break it to y'all, but yeah, there's no such thing as that.
I'm actually relieved to hear you say that, because showing up with love and light every single day, even when I haven't gotten any sleep and I'm not feeling well, that seems a little bit daunting to me. And so one of the things I'm hearing is that when it comes to thinking about toxicity and our own toxicity, maybe it's helpful to bring some realism into the room.
Yeah, and really like give yourself some grace as you go through your journey. What I found, it's funny because the book I wrote is called Now Here, but in speaking with one of my coaches, the next book I'm going to write is going to be called We're Not Done Here. Like I'm still in the journey. I'm still in it. And it's really this ongoing evolution of life as we know it and challenging assumptions. You know, it's been interesting in my journey in the last couple of years is publicly coming out about being toxic and being a toxic boss and running this business that had not great culture and transforming that very publicly. I think a lot of people make assumptions, and I'm seeing that now. I get a lot of DMs and people messaging me like, oh, everything's so great. I bet it's so amazing for you. You look great. It's all da. But in reality, I'm going through now another cycle of death and rebirth and another dark night of the soul and another third mountain I'm about to climb. And so I wanted to be really transparent about that, especially on this podcast, that it never stops. You know, I think initially when I was writing my story and really unpacking what I've gone through in the last few years, I felt like I was just taking a list of things off that I wanted to quote unquote heal.
Yeah.
And that they would just go away or they wouldn't show up or something else wouldn't rise to fill its place. And so there is this journey and this continued commitment and also being able to give yourself grace, because when you do this work, it's hardcore and it can bring up things that, you know, that show up in toxic ways and you don't even know it until you know it. Like you got to go on this Dora Explorer, you know, like expedition and go excavating your soul, essentially.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just thinking about that the other day. There were a whole host of personal developmental challenges that my own coach brought to my attention. And my husband happily agreed with him about concerning areas in my life that I will need to develop in order to continue moving forward. And I threw my hands up in the air. And Dom, I was just saying, when will this ever stop? When will I just hit the top of the mountain? And what you're saying, I'm hearing, and is a repeated thing that I'm hearing with those that go on plant medicine journeys as part of their own growth cycles, is that the work never does end. Again, to me, that's bringing some realism into the room.
Yeah, no, it doesn't end. And I think the beauty of plant medicine, at least how I've experienced it, has been the opportunity to peel back layers and layers and layers and layers of things that you don't even know. You know, the things that I had experienced in one of my journeys, I had no idea I was still carrying with me. I thought, you know, I had moved on from it, but it was buried so deep in my subconscious and it was like pretty heavy. And so to bring that into my consciousness and to work through that has been such a beautiful experience. And this is over a year ago of a journey that I was on, and I'm still integrating and I'm still learning lessons just from that one time.
Wow. Let me step back a little bit before we get into your plant journey. The idea of a toxic boss, I have no doubt it resonates with a lot of people, both as those of us who have been toxic bosses. Yes, those of you who have worked for me, I know there have been times when I've been toxic, I confess. And those of us who have been the recipients of the gifts that toxic bosses can bring. When you say you were a toxic boss, talk to us a little bit about how that manifested itself and maybe to the extent that you can, what was behind some of that.
Yeah, so how it showed up for me was a complete lack of awareness around how the language I chose to use with my team, the sarcasm that I often relied on, the negativity that I brought, the heaviness that I brought, and also my old kind of childhood wounds manifesting in this form of micromanagement, distrust, control, and, very much command and control style of leadership. But, not to make excuses, to my defense, I didn't go to leadership school. I just, was a solopreneur and then started building a business and leading a team. Nobody taught me what it meant to lead a team, have people reporting into me, have to oversee other people's work. And so I didn't actually know that I was toxic. I wouldn't put a label on it. But when I started to commit to my personal development work, then I started getting a fresh perspective from some of my coaches and different peer groups I was in and masterminds, and saw, oh, okay, so this company is going this way and my relationship is going that way. And like, maybe it's not everybody else, maybe it's me.
Right.
Wow, okay, that was a realization. So it was a tough realization, but it also gave me something to anchor me. Like, I'm not going to go sit and try and change a bunch of people. I'm going to focus on my journey and what I need to do, because at the time that I decided to even invest in my first coach, it was COVID. I had no money. I was not even thinking about any of that. But I also was feeling so down and feeling like I can't live in this vibe anymore. What the hell's going on? I got to make a change. And so I'm willing to go do something scary, which is look in the mirror and go, yeah, it's not everybody, it's you. And be willing to kind of deal with whatever came up.
Yeah. So much of what you just said, I can so deeply relate to. And Dom, I have no doubt that your honesty within the past few minutes will force a lot of people to really look inside and either say, wow, I've been on that journey myself, or maybe that's a journey I need to begin to step into. This idea, it's sort of like when people were criticizing this rock band in the 80s, Bon Jovi. Critics were trashing them left and right, and finally someone said, 80 million people can't be wrong. Maybe they actually aren't what you think they are. And this idea that perhaps everyone who was working for me or around me was somehow wrong, that I was this virtuous angel and the behaviors that I was engaging that people thought were not very attractive were actually unattractive. But it's one thing to go and see a coach and learn about the mechanics of leadership and begin to study the art of it. It's another thing to move from that into plant medicine. Talk to us a little bit about how you moved into that particular direction.
Yeah, I mean, the funniest story of all of it is that if you knew me, I was not a psychedelic experimenter in college or high school. Many people I meet on my journey often say, oh, I did this in high school, or I did that in college, or I experimented. I did not do that. I was a straight-laced, generally kind of, straight A student, and very, corporate and conservative, I guess. There was recreational things and substances that I would have used throughout my, early professional career, whatever, party drugs, but nothing like truly plant medicine, nothing ceremony. I never even heard that term until 2 years ago. I had no idea. So really, my first even glimmer into any of this, I was at a retreat that was not a psychedelic retreat, but it was a healing retreat for conscious leaders called Leaders Create Leaders, led by Gerard Adams, one of my coaches. And we had a really powerful breath work experience. That breath work was holotropic breath work. And someone had shared with me it was like an LSD journey. I'm like, what the heck? All right. And I definitely, I was like, well, it's not, because there's no substances, so I'll do it. It's my own breath. I feel safe with that. Okay. But in the experience, it was about an hour long, and I saw so many visuals. I felt like I died. I felt like I went to heaven. I saw my grandma in heaven. Like, I had a trip, a super, super trip.
Wow.
And so after that, I was like, I'm kind of curious about this stuff. And so through different circles, I met, other people that had talked about plant medicine, had talked about it for healing purposes. And to me, that resonated, because I was still very corporate, still very straight edge, still very not wanting to explore. It felt, also the way that my brain's wired, I'm like, I'm a control freak. I can't like just let go and surrender. Like how is this going to work? Because I like to be in control, but really that's all ego, right? There is no real control in anything in life. So I just started talking to people. And I think that's why it's really amazing to have platforms like Webdelics, because you can do some research, some baseline research. You can just like do a little bit of reading. You don't have to go down this crazy rabbit hole and scare yourself, because just like anything else that you're researching, there's always going to be your camp A and camp B, right? And they're going to be opposing. But it's nice to have a place to go and just read and see and learn about the different clinical trials that are going on and the destigmatization that's happening and this new third wave of renaissance of psychedelics for healing that's emerging right now.
One of the things that's in the background of everything that you've just said, and I want to take us into as a little bit of a rabbit hole here, is the environment that those who interact with straight-laced corporate America may be acting in, or maybe actually living in if they work for some of these larger, more conservative organizations. Look, I worked, for instance, in a very straight-laced organization for many years called government. Don't get much more straight-laced than that. Maybe banking is. But that being said, the idea of psychedelics, when I talk to some of my friends in government, as well as other more conservative corporate professions about doing this podcast, there was still a little bit of a breath drawn in, or, oh my, what are you doing? Oh my, are you going to dye your hair pink and get a nose ring next? I mean, all that sort of stuff. Do you think that the psychedelic renaissance that we're in is ever one that will be able to penetrate corporate America? And I ask that because if it does, we may be talking about some real transformations occurring within large organizations that form the employment foundation of this entire country.
Yeah. My hope and my prayer and my dream is that it would make its way to people in companies that need it, that truly need this type of expansion of consciousness and ability to connect with themselves and their true essence on a deeper level, so that they can go create amazing things because they're already in positions of influence, power, authority, abundance, wealth, all of that. Like, those are really the people I would love to, get involved. But at the same time, it's so complex, the ecosystem of psychedelics and the way that people think about it. And the, there's a lot of different camps that have to be considered. And there's people who have certain fundamental religious backgrounds that are like very opposed to this type of work, and they've got their own story around it. So while I hope that one day in my lifetime it will be something that's more widely accepted in corporate America, I don't know that it will be, just because of so many other things that, keep people away from it.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. And I just, as an aside, have to raise, since you mentioned the issue of some, for instance, religious communities. There is an episode of this podcast featuring a guest by the name of Owen Fitzpatrick, who actually does talk about the relationship between psychedelic experiences and religious traditions. So anyone interested in that segment about what you just said, Dom, should definitely take a listen to that episode. But getting back to you, how then did you end up taking that first trip? And tell us a little bit about what it was like for you.
Yeah, so the first experience that I had was a psilocybin journey in Costa Rica. It was a private ceremony with me and my husband and two shamans. They were also a couple. And we went with the intention of doing some deep work around our relationship, reimagining what our relationship could be, and letting go a lot of anger, resentment, and other issues that we had been carrying for a long time. And so it was interesting because my husband had dabbled in psychedelics in, his high school and college years and was way more open and into that ever than me. So he was initially excited when I brought this to the table as an idea for us. He was like, wait a second, what? I'll meet you in Costa Rica and do mushrooms. Let's do this. But it was funny because the day of the ceremony, we had been prepping our bodies and we were just like, very clean as a whistle. And he felt a little nervous. Like he went into it and he was nervous and I was not nervous. And I'm the one that's like normally the nervous one. So I was like ready to go and just like, all right, let's open me up and let's see what's in here. And what do I not know yet about myself? And he was like, I have butterflies in my stomach and this and that. I'm like, what? Like, so that was funny.
Relationships are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that journey transform you? And how did that end up taking you into this place of examining yourself as a toxic leader?
Yeah. So that journey was so beautiful. I mean, it was a couple hours. And I think at one point, the key thing to me was that I got down to like my 16-year-old core self and essence, like before the hardening of corporate and having a job and all of those things and having a lot of male bosses that often dominated my career and conversation and life and trajectory, and male clients that were the same. It got me down to this, like, my purest essence. Like, what was my heart and soul? What was I doing then? And how was I feeling? And that showed me that I at one point was, very much in the light, in the lightness of life and bringing joy and being happy and like just, carefree. So it did exist. And I think that was the seed that it planted, was like, hey, you aren't always like this. You aren't always this hard shell, not letting anyone or anything get in. But through my career, because I started working in recruiting at 17, I'm 38 now. So through my career, it took away a lot of that innocence and that pure essence, because I was immediately just like in corporate with a bunch of older people, always having to posture, always having to pretend, always having to like wear a suit and look a certain way. And so I had this avatar I was living in for so long. And this experience brought me back to myself and showed me that I still am that person. I'm not this hardened shell. Like, I can break through all that shit and be back to my purest expression. And so that's the journey the last few years, is continuing to go back there and continuing to chip away at the layers and layers and layers of conditioning.
One of the things that I'm hearing in what you said is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that the environments that we operate within in our professional organizational structures, whether as clients, employees, bosses, or whatever, sometimes lead us to feel as though we have to posture a certain way. But then it can be easy to forget that that posture isn't who we are.
Yeah.
And am I correct in hearing that somehow the psychedelics were able to get you to remember and connect to that true self inside?
100%. That you nailed it, Scott. Like, that is what psychedelics have done for me. It has brought me back to my heart. It has awakened me spiritually. It has softened me. It has challenged me. Like, these journeys are not always easy and light and beautiful. I've had, knock on wood, a few that have been so beautiful. And then I've had others that have been dark and scary and challenging, equally beautiful, despite not always feeling like it. I think that's the thing that's important for people who are psychedelic curious to understand, that the journeys will always show you, and they always say the medicine will only show you and give you what you need. And that is true. But if you need to really be rattled to get some of that stuff out, then that is what you'll get. And it can feel scary and it can feel challenging. But at the same time, once you're through it, you've created space to kind of clear it, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, and then that does raise deeper issue that, again, has sort of come up and been in the background of some of the episodes that we've discussed so far. And it certainly has come up in the popular literature out there in magazines, newspaper, online, print, and otherwise around psychedelics becoming more and more accepted as a mental health treatment or a spiritual treatment modality, which is that there can be quote unquote bad experiences or journeys that might not be the blissful or easy or joy-filled ones that sometimes can really capture the psychedelic curious's imagination.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that and your own thinking around that topic.
You know, how I even ended up in Peru last year to sit with ayahuasca for the first time. It was in November 2021. I was at another retreat, not a psychedelic one, again with conscious leaders. And I had felt a calling from within that was like, yeah, I think you're ready to go deeper. I think you're ready to explore ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. And initially, before that, I was a complete hard no, zero interest, not going to do it ever. Didn't like the idea of what I had heard about ayahuasca journeys. But this calling was really interesting. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'll follow this voice from within. And it led me to Peru. And I guess I didn't keep myself in my preconceived notion of what my journey would or wouldn't be. I set no expectation. I set an intention of what I wanted to get out of it or what I wanted to release or let go of or whatever. But I wasn't like, please make this an easy journey or don't make it, or not make it a hard journey. It was just like, please show me whatever is for me right now to work through. Bring it all up and I'm not scared. I feel supported and I'm ready. So it was like a very much like taking a step for myself and being brave. And so that was good. But prior to that, I also have been doing a lot of work and like trying to really push myself to my edge of, my personal development. So I feel like, no, that's not everyone's journey. Some people will just go straight in and go and do ayahuasca. Other people will lead up to it. I definitely had a lead up to it and coupled it with my other coaching work and just really, really being in a place where I knew that no matter what was shown to me in my journey, I could and would handle it and be able to like face off with it. But it was definitely not easy.
Do you then have advice for those who may be either at the beginning of their own psychedelic journey or contemplating what the psychedelic journey may look like for them long term about approaching a day in which that sort of experience may come to them?
Yeah, so I think for someone who's decided that they do want to try psychedelics, I think that's the first key. So everyone's decision is individual. They don't feel coerced. They feel at peace with it. They feel it's in alignment with the work that they're doing. They have community. They have support. They have either coaching and or friends who have been there, experienced it, they can talk about it with. I think it's important to do a little bit of research, but not crazy overbearing, trying to talk yourself out of it. If you feel the calling and you've decided that's what you want to do, I would encourage people to do a bit of research, talk to people and follow it and follow the path and see, but also want to say that, psychedelics aren't for everybody. And now the beautiful thing about what's emerging within the healthcare system and world is that there are, hopefully there will be a lot of options for people to go do this, without having to go to Peru, let's say. There's access to things now where people can have these experiences. And it's not this whole end-to-end kind of trip, like literal trip and all of that. Like I think that there's things like that are emerging more like local in certain communities. And I think that's really beautiful too. And you have like, healthcare trained professionals who can sit and journey with you. I have a friend of mine who does ketamine therapy and she goes in, gets her IV for an hour, has someone sitting right next to her. If they want to hold her hand, she'll hold her hand, and then she leaves and she's off to her day, So there's things like that too, where you don't have to go all the way extreme. You can do what feels good for you, and you can microdose. You can go low and start slow, and you don't have to go all full shebang too. That's the other beautiful thing about where we're at with things right now.
Well, and that, though, does go as to something that is independently scary and that I did want to ask you about in a second, which is, irrespective of concerns I might have about the safety of any particular medicine, the other part is concerns I have about going to some foreign country and not necessarily knowing how to assess those that are providing any experience I might be seeking, especially if it's a country where English isn't even the dominant language, as opposed to, at least here in the U.S., hopefully at some point in the future, if this is something that becomes more and more popular, some sort of ability to assess in our own language and within the context of our own culture, those that are providing experiences will be accessible for people as well. But how did you then ensure your own safety when you went on your journeys?
Yeah, for me, it was the group that I was with and getting recommendations from the leaders of those groups to work with the shamans that they had deep experience with, 10 years plus experience in ceremony with this particular tribe and these particular shamans and this particular part of the jungle and the medicine. I knew right out the gate that I wanted to sit medicine with the specific group of people. And so I built my relationship with them, and I would only do it with them. That was in my head. It's I'm only going to do it with you guys. And I went, had the experience. It was perfectly exactly how I wanted it to feel for me. And I felt very, very safe. I mean, very basic and logistically, we had a doctor on site with us. We had people there to really, really make sure that if anything were to go sideways, we had the support that we needed. So I think that was really important. I did just book in to go to another retreat at the end of this year, at the end of May in Costa Rica. And I got to be honest, when I booked it, I was a hardcore yes, booked it. And then I'm oof, all right, I'm going to go do ayahuasca again. All right. I didn't really I booked it really quickly because I wanted to be in community with this group of people. And then I'm oh, well, all right, I got to go there again. And my body clamped up a little bit because you know that it's beautiful, but it I'm in this whole other phase of life now. So I'm all right, well, let's see what the medicine's going to bring me this time.
I think that's fascinating. You know what I'm imagining? It's sort of like when you go up the roller coaster and you're at that first top place where you've been going up inch by inch, and then suddenly you're about to do that big drop. I don't know about you, but I sit and say to myself, okay, I'm doing this. I don't know what I was thinking, but here I am.
Yes, it's exactly that. It's I don't know. I definitely am an advocate for psychedelics, but then as I book myself in, I'm oh, snap. All right, I got to go do this again. Okay.
I love your honesty. Now, how did you change as a boss as your psychedelic journey deepened? And how did leaving toxicity behind manifest itself for you?
Yeah, I think I came back, at least after that first journey last year, I guess in 2021, feeling free, feeling forgiveness of myself, feeling forgiveness of others, feeling forgiveness of my parents, of things I was carrying for so many years. And that freedom and forgiveness created so much space in my physical body for more love and more light and more joy. So it was almost up to that point, I was just filled to the brim with anger and resentment and whatever low vibe energy I was carrying. And so through these experiences, I feel more than 50% of me is just a clear vessel for the new now. Wow. And so with that energy, I brought that back to my team, and I've created other, psychedelic-like experiences. We will do breath work together if they want. They don't have to, but I've brought back other conscious healing modalities and invited that and held space for my team to explore that. We've talked about microdosing. I have people on my team who prefer to do that versus other medications that they might have had to be on. And so, I think it's just really me experimenting, feeling lighter, more free, more loving, more fun, like actually literally having fun as one of our core values and embodying that has changed the culture. And that has, at the time, last year and the year before, we just went through tremendous growth within our company. We got a bunch of awards around culture. I had my team voting for these awards for us. And all of that is a testament to the commitment to the work, the work that I'm doing, the work that we're doing collectively. And even now, we're a recruiting company. There's not a lot of hiring happening at the current moment in the market, but I have people who are alumni on my team. They've left, they've gotten other jobs. They want to come back. They're talking to me about their toxic bosses at their new places. They're praying for us. They're holding the vision. And that just speaks to me so deeply that, at least when they were with us, they felt this unique new energy, and they now can either bring that to their workplace and be the light and be the lighthouse for others, or they can remember it and hold it in their heart that it doesn't have to be the way that they're feeling it right now. There is places like my company and other companies where leaders do this work, and they, you have to believe it, but it is real.
If there is one takeaway that I can pull from this conversation, and I won't lie, there are a lot of takeaways, but if there's one, a lot of what you just said goes to that, which is that so many people work in environments that are dark, that are grim, that are underworld-like, and understanding that there are places where there is light, understanding that they may end up working for a company like yours, or if they've worked for a company like yours and they're now in a darker place, like you just said, holding on to that memory and maybe being an agent for changing the experience of those in their immediate orbit, that is something that is a message and a possibility that I think a lot of people need to hear and feel. And I want to thank you for that and connecting that to one person's plant journey experiences. That's honestly something that would never have occurred to me or that I would have put together, but for your very transparent and honest storytelling and discussion today. If there is one takeaway or additional thing that you would like to share with the audience as we say goodbye for today, what might that be, Dom?
I would say if you were like me, or you currently are, like how I was, where you felt like maybe you couldn't change, like you're stuck in your ways, I would invite you to be open and know deeply that you can change. You can. I was the hardest of all hard people out there, and I'm still not fully there, but I've really, really made such significant progress. And so I just want to inspire people to tap into your own power and take control and responsibility and go do it. Go explore and find your way back to your own heart, because you can do it.
Powerful. Dom, there may be people sending you resumes left and right after hearing this or watching it.
Yay.
So I hesitate to even ask you this question, but I'm going to anyway, and you just answer it as you see fit. I know that folks that have experienced this with you now are going to want to find out more about you. Where can they go to follow you on social media? Do you have a website that they could peek at? Do you have a book or anything that they can read and find out more about you? Just tell us all, please. We have to know.
Yeah, all the things. My personal website is domfarnan.com. You can read more about my company, connectllc.com. My book is called Now Here, A Journey from Toxic Boss to Conscious Connector. It's available on Amazon and where other books are sold. And then if you like Instagram, I'm at I am Dom Farnan.
Thank you so much. Now, for those of you who have enjoyed today and are interested in watching more or listening to more episodes, I am stoked about what we have coming up. We're going to be discussing everything from psychedelics as a potential modality for dealing with some of the challenges of aging, to a specific episode tying into what Dom spoke to us about today concerning psychedelics as a leadership training modality. And we are also coming very soon, a truly transformative episode about how psychedelics can change the way that you view gratitude in your life. It is exciting stuff, and I am proud to be part of it. So if you got a lot out of today's episode, as I have no doubt you did, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast on any of the major platforms or on YouTube. Leave a positive remark on YouTube or a 5-star review on your favorite podcast audio platform. Then go to our website, webdelics.com. That's WEBDELICS.com, and sign up for our blog for trusted and objective information about psychedelics and plant medicine. And by the way, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, and any other social media platforms such as YouTube that you may frequent. We will be happy to be there and share more information with you. In the meantime, thank you for joining us today, and I will see you next time for another episode of the Webdelics podcast.
Thanks, Scott.